I want to talk about humility, the version of it that's made us disappear. This isn't about calling anyone out. It's about naming something that many of us were taught. This is something that's been floating around in my head for a very long time. Something I was never able to put into words until now. I feel like the true meaning of humility has changed. It feels like if you celebrate yourself, you might hurt someone's feelings or make someone uncomfortable or be labeled as too much. So we've all learned to shrink, to soften our accomplishments and hide parts of ourselves before anyone even asked us to. And that isn't humility. That's self-erasure dressed up as politeness. Real humility doesn't ask us to disappear. Humility is knowing who you are. This is just one of the conversations I think we need to have, because I don't want to keep letting these things sit in silence, like an elephant in the room we all feel but don't name. I want to do something different. I don't want us to be louder or smaller. I want us to learn to be accurate, to take up the space that we already deserve, to be seen without guilt, and to shine without permission. Somewhere along the way, humility shifted. It stopped being something internal, something like knowing yourself, and it became something you performed to keep other people comfortable. What we started rewarding wasn't self-knowledge, it was restraint. It's like confidence is allowed, but only in controlled doses. And when confidence is only allowed in controlled doses, you don't stop being capable of it, you start monitoring yourself. When confidence comes up, there's usually an immediate fear underneath it. I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to seem egotistical. I don't want to make others feel bad. But there's a distinction that matters. Arrogance is loud insecurity. Confidence is quiet self-trust. Most of us aren't insecure about our abilities. We're anxious about the consequences of showing them. And you can see this show up in really small ways, like how uncomfortable it can feel to receive praise. We immediately point out our flaws and we hand the compliment right back. And don't get me wrong, building each other up is an amazing, beautiful thing to do that we should continue to do. But it doesn't have to happen at our own expense. At some point, we learned that simply saying thank you could be read as arrogance. It's like the Mean Girls moment. You're like really pretty. Thank you. So you agree. You think you're really pretty? That fear gets lodged early, and most of us are still managing it. None of this feels dramatic in the moment. It just feels like being careful, like reading the room, like being empathic. But when you do it long enough, that carefulness stops being a strategy and starts shaping how you exist. Our confidence has to be expressed in order for it to become a habit, because the mind instinctively strengthens the pathways that we use the most. This is how hiding stops becoming a choice. At first it's conscious. You soften your words, you downplay a win, you read the room before you speak, and that does make sense because you're trying to stay safe. But when you do it enough times, it stops feeling like a decision and it becomes automatic. You start editing yourself before you even notice that you're doing it. And eventually the body doesn't ask, is it okay to be seen? It just assumes the answer is no. If you never let yourself fully be seen, your nervous system starts to believe you're not allowed to exist at full volume. Because the nervous system remembers what kept you safe, not what made you accurate. It gets internalized. You don't just hide from people anymore. You hide from yourself. You second guess joy, you minimize excitement, and it's not because you don't feel it, but it's because your body learned it was easier not to show it. And that's how confidence slowly erodes, not because it wasn't there, but because it was never allowed to stay. And here's where things get a little bit tricky. Accuracy means presenting yourself honestly, not exaggerated or minimized. You don't need to inflate yourself in order to stop shrinking. Well, being accurate means that I don't make myself smaller so that others can feel safe because I'm not in charge of other people's emotional regulation. But I also don't need to make myself bigger to prove that I matter. Humility is simply self-awareness without distortion. By definition, humility means having an accurate, modest view of yourself, freedom from arrogance. It does not mean pretending that you are less than you are. Now, the word humble actually has two meanings. As an adjective, it describes character. But as a verb, it means to lower someone, to make them smaller or submissive. Those two meanings do not carry the same intention. So when someone is told to humble themselves for simply not shrinking, this is usually not talking about character. They're being asked to lower themselves for someone else's comfort. That is not humility. That is social conditioning and a misuse of language to police confidence. Arrogance, on the other hand, means exaggerating your importance or assuming superiority. Arrogance isn't confidence. Arrogance is insecurity with armor. Some people say that the opposite of humility is arrogance. Arrogance is loud, defensive, superior, and performative. So when we fear losing our humility, what we're really afraid of is being misperceived as arrogant for being visible. Confidence doesn't need an audience to exist. So if you're being honest about your abilities without inflating them and without diminishing them, you're not being arrogant. A lot of times when someone is told to humble themselves, what the other person is actually referring to is self-possession. Self-possession is steady. It's non-performative. It doesn't explain or justify. It's grounded in reality. It is clear about worth, and it doesn't shrink to soothe. The part that we don't talk about is that self-possession doesn't fully exist in isolation. It becomes real when it's allowed to be seen. Because it's easy to know who we are on the inside, but this doesn't become a habit unless it's practiced physically and visibly in the world. That's why I love modeling, photography, and the world of pinup. Finding a safe space, safe community where you can try on the confidence that you're building with others who are doing the same, where being seen doesn't come with punishment. It's wonderful. Everyone feels different when they glam it up. And I love the word adornment. The thought of adorning your body. Adornment isn't about impressing anyone else. It's about choosing to give yourself the attention you deserve. It's kind of like a form of self-respect or self-care. It's saying, I'm allowed to be seen, not to impress anyone, because adornment doesn't create worth, it reveals it. But you do it because it feels good to inhabit yourself fully. It feels good to see yourself. Yes, it takes a little effort, and yes, there's some learning involved for however you choose to adorn. But I know for me, there have been so many styles and looks I've wanted to try, and nowhere that felt safe enough to try them. I mean, if I walk into Walmart wearing a ball gown, I'm probably not going to feel very comfortable being seen, and my confidence probably will take a hit. But that's where creativity comes in, because you don't need permission to experiment, and you don't need a big production. Anyone can create space to be seen. Sometimes that's on your own or with a friend or two. There are so many ways that we can explore this on our own or with others. I've been really lucky where I am to be able to network with other creative minds and curate group shoots with themes that allow us to explore those ideas. What you create doesn't have to be published. You don't need it to go into a magazine, although that is really fun. It can be a huge confidence booster, but it can also have the downside of disappointment if you're not selected. So just remember not to pressure yourself. You don't have to share what you create, or you can. It's totally up to you. But the point of it isn't the performance. The point is creating so that you see yourself, so you can feel the joy of it, so you can be your own witness, so your body registers it and it stops being an idea and starts becoming familiar. This applies to so many forms of creativity. It can be how you dress, how you style your hair, how you move your body, the art you create, and the things you make with your hands. Creativity is just another way of letting yourself be visible to yourself. Creativity can become healing when it allows you to witness yourself without punishment and without needing permission, because it gives the body a place to express what words can't always hold. You don't need to inflate yourself, and you don't need to disappear. Hiding your light doesn't make you humble. It just makes the world darker. And I'm tired of being in the darkness.